I didn't plan to say it at dinner, but the words burned through my chest and leapt out before I could swallow them back. I'm pregnant. Forks froze. The kitchen clock kept ticking, rude and steady. My father Richard folded the local paper once, then again like he could crease the truth out of me. What did you say? His glasses slid down the bridge of his nose, and his eyes were colder than the January wind clawing at our windows. I'm 17, Dad. I'm pregnant. My voice shook but didn't break. I kept my hands flat on the table so he wouldn't see them tremble. Margaret, my mother, still held the serving spoon, gravy trembling at the edge. Clara, please tell me this is some misguided joke. It isn't. The spoon clattered, and a brown comet landed on the tablecloth she ironed every Tuesday. People will talk, she whispered, as if gossip could crush ribs. What will the church say? Your teachers? What will you say? I asked. To me. My father stood so fast his chair screeched. You will not raise a child under my roof. Not after this. Pack your things. The room swam. You're throwing me out? You chose, he said, jaw tight. Actions, consequences.
He flicked a glance at my mother. No more discussion.
My mother took a breath, the kind that breaks halfway up the throat. Richard, he cut his hand through the air. The verdict was final. He stormed down the hall. A door slammed. The house shuddered. I didn't beg. I wanted to God. I wanted to fall to my knees and bargain with all the years I'd been a good daughter, but something stubborn rose up in me like a flame. I stood, wiped the gravy with a napkin I didn't even see, and walked to my room. The glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling looked silly in daylight. I pulled my old duffel from under the bed and started filling it. 2 sweaters, the jeans with the mended knee, a toothbrush, the notebook where I kept plans that suddenly felt like paper birds in a storm. At the bottom of a drawer, a photo from last summer, Ethan's arm around me, our faces sun-bright and oblivious. I pressed my thumb to his smile. He'd said he loved me. He'd said we were a team. He'd also said he needed space 2 weeks ago and stopped returning my messages. A team of one, then. I zipped the bag and pressed my palm to my stomach, small and secret beneath my sweatshirt. I'm not leaving you, I whispered. They're leaving us. When I came back to the dining room, the meatloaf had formed a skin, and my mother sat with both hands folded like she was praying to rewind time. Clara, she said, eyes glassy, think, where will you go? You have school. I have Grandma Agnes, I said. The name felt like a handhold on a cliff. Agnes, my father's mother, who smelled of tea leaves and cedar, and told me once, if you're ever lost, child, my door's open. My mother flinched. Your father won't be there. I shrugged into my coat. She reached for me and stopped, fingers hovering inches from my sleeve. I'm not choosing him over you, she said, barely audible. I'm afraid. For me, or for what people will say? I didn't wait for the answer. I couldn't survive it if it was the wrong one. The porch air slapped me, clean and cruel. Snow feathered the lawn. The streetlight hummed. I walked fast before the house could change its mind, before my knees could. At the corner, I fumbled my phone with numb fingers and scrolled to the only number that made sense. It rang once, twice. I imagined Agnes in her worn armchair, a blanket across her knees, the radio mumbling old standards. I imagined her saying my name the way she did when I was small, like it was something worth keeping. What if she didn't pick up? What if she had finally decided to stop rescuing people who didn't listen? Agnes Matthews, came her voice, papery and iron at once. Grandma, I said, and the breath left my body like I'd been holding it for months. It's me, a beat, a soft rustle, the sound of someone standing. Clara, darling, tell me what's wrong. I need a place to stay, tonight. You have one, she said. You always did. I swallowed, tasted metal. Dad told me to leave. I figured, she muttered. He forgets the ladder he climbed. Her tone sharpened. Can you get here? It's late. I'll catch the last bus, I said. I'll be there by midnight.
Good, I'll put the kettle on. And Clara, yes?
Don't look back long enough to doubt yourself. I ended the call. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. My breath came in little ghosts. Behind me, a window curtain twitched the shape of my mother's hand, maybe, or only my wish for it. I tightened my grip on the duffel and started toward the corner, toward whatever waited at the end of the line. The bus headlights turned the street to glass as they rounded the bend. And for a heartbeat I wondered, when that door hissed open, would I step onto a beginning or into a mistake I couldn't undo? The bus sighed like a tired animal when its doors folded open. Heat hit my face. Salt and diesel clung to the air. I kept one hand on the rail and the other low on my stomach, the duffel digging into my shoulder. I didn't look back. I couldn't, Anis's voice from the call steady as old wood was the only thing holding me together. Springfield at midnight felt smaller, kinder. Frost glittered on hedges like someone had shaken a jar of stars and they'd stuck. Anis's porch light burned a soft halo. Before I could knock, the door swung wide and there she was, quilted robe. Silver hair escaping its clip, eyes sharp enough to slice through lies. "Come in, child," she said, with no questions and no shock. She folded me into a hug that smelled like chamomile and cedar. My breath shuddered out, and only then did I realize how long I'd been holding it. She sat me at the little kitchen table with the oilcloth daisies and put a mug between my hands. "Drink, tell me what needs telling." "Dad told me to leave," my voice snagged.
He said I won't raise a child under his roof.
"A roof is only good if it covers a heart," she said. "And for the record, you will raise a child under mine." She tilted her head, taking me in the way nurses read charts. "How far along?" 8 weeks, maybe 9. "I took the test today. Then we have work to do." "Doctor, vitamins. A list of what we can borrow and what we can live without." She opened a drawer and slid a little notebook toward me, its cover worn smooth. "Write it down. Plans calm storms." I wrapped both hands around the mug. "I don't have much money." "I do," she said, fishing a tin from the pantry. On the lid, in her careful printing, "For foolish days," she popped it open to show a neatly folded stack of small bills. Turns out life's foolishness often looks like bravery from the right angle. Shame flickered. "I should have been smarter." "You should have been loved better," she countered, not unkindly. "There's a difference." She set a plate in front of me, buttered toast, a sliced apple. "Eat." Crumbs stuck to my lip. "Ethan's gone," I said, because saying his name out loud kept me from making him a saint in my head.
He wanted space, Agnes snorted softly.
"Boys who want space don't deserve a front row seat." She hesitated, then added, "Your father telephoned me hours ago. Said if I took you in, I shouldn't expect visits." My stomach dipped. He called before I did. "He knew where you'd run." She reached across the table and squeezed my fingers. Her hand was warm, the skin thin as tissue, the grip iron. "He's proud and frightened. Pride makes poor armor. It leaks when life rains." I nodded, grateful and aching all at once. "I want to finish school. I don't know how, but I do. We'll ask the counselor. There's always a way that is not obvious to the loud people." She pushed the notebook closer. "Right, call school, call clinic, buy oranges." "Oranges?" "You'll crave them by morning," she said, as if she were telling the weather. For a while we were quiet, spoons chiming, the radiator ticking, the kitchen clock beating its steady promise that time doesn't stop for wounded people. I fished my phone from my pocket and stared at Ethan's name. My thumb hovered. Then I typed, "I'm pregnant." It took everything I had to press send. The reply came faster than I deserved. A gray bubble popped, then vanished, then returned like it couldn't decide whether to be cruel. Finally, "Don't text me again." "I'm sorry, please." Agnes watched my face shift and didn't ask. She only set a second slice of toast on my plate, like you would for someone who's just come in from the cold. "Sleep," she said at last, rising with a soft crack of her knees. "There's a hot water bottle in the blue cupboard, fresh sheets on the spare bed. Tomorrow we make a new map." I stood a little unsteady. "Thank you, Grandma." She touched my cheek, thumb catching a tear I hadn't noticed. "You thank me by letting me help." I carried my duffel down the narrow hall past photographs lined in mismatched frames, weddings, Sunday picnics, the day my father held up a fish bigger than his grin. I paused at that one. Agnes's voice floated from the kitchen, humming something low and ancient. I set the frame face down. In the small back bedroom, I smoothed the quilt and laid the hot water bottle where my spine had been clenched for hours. The house settled around me with old bones creaks. My body began to remember softness. Headlights swept the wallpaper white, then gone, then returned and held, bright as noon. Tires crunched the frozen gravel. Anna's humming stopped. Footsteps on the porch, slow and certain. A knock 3 times, heavy as a gavel. Agnes? A man's voice, rough with winter and something else. I sat up, pulse skittering. Was it my father come to drag me back, or someone with news I wasn't ready to hear? The knock echoed through the small house like a hammer to my chest. I froze halfway out of bed, my hand pressed to my stomach. Agnes moved faster than I thought her knees could carry her. The chain on the door rattled, then her voice cut the silence. It's too late for visits. Who's there? A pause then, just Tom from the parish. Heard your light was on. Snow's heavy tonight. Thought you might need shoveling. Relief thudded through me so hard my legs gave way. Agnes cracked the door just enough to wave him off. We managed fine, thank you. When she slid the bolt shut again, she didn't look at me right away. Only after the kettle hissed did she say, "Not your father, not yet." The words lingered. Not yet. Morning brought orange slices, exactly as she'd predicted, and the first of many doctor visits. Weeks blurred into months, each one carving me into something I hadn't been before: mother, provider, fighter. The day Daniel arrived, squalling and slick with newness, I held him against my chest and whispered, "We're starting over, you and me." His tiny fist wrapped my finger, and something inside me finally stopped breaking. But love didn't soften the bills. I worked wherever I could, wiping tables at Rosie's diner, stocking shelves at Murphy's Market, even scrubbing offices after hours while Agnes rocked Daniel to sleep. My fingers blistered, my back ached, but every paycheck went into a rusted coffee tin under my bed labeled Daniel's future. At night, exhaustion wrapped me like another quilt, yet I'd lie awake listening to him breathe, terrified the world could snatch him away as easily as it had snatched my family. By 5, Daniel's questions were endless. Why do stars look small if they're big? How do worms move without legs? His eyes, hazel like mine, shone with an intensity that made strangers pause. One summer evening, while Agnes rocked on the porch, he crawled into her lap sticky with popsicle juice. "Grandma," he asked, "why don't I have Grandpa and Grandma like the other kids at school?" The knitting needles stilled. I was in the kitchen drying dishes, and my heart plummeted through the floorboards. Agnes smoothed his hair, voice steady. "Families aren't always built the same way, love. You've got me, and you've got the best mother any boy could ask for. That's more than enough. But where are they?" he pressed. "Didn't they want me?" Agnes's silence stretched. Finally, she said, "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes because they're scared. But your mama, she wasn't scared of loving you. That's the truth you keep." Daniel seemed to accept it, but when he padded into the kitchen later, he caught me wiping my face with a dish towel. "Mama, your eyes are wet." "Soap," I lied, forcing a smile. "Burns worse than onions." He didn't believe me. His small hand reached up, clumsy but sure, and patted my cheek. "It's okay. I'll be smart enough for both of us." Years passed. School praised him, his teachers sent notes home marveling at his mind. He'd disassemble flashlights just to rebuild them brighter, sketching circuits on scrap paper with crayons. Pride swelled in me so fierce it scared me. But every report card, every science fair ribbon, carried a sting. My father would never clap him on the back, my mother would never bake him a cake. They had erased themselves, yet their absence shadowed our joy like a cloud that wouldn't drift. One rainy evening, after a double shift, I found Daniel cross-legged on the floor surrounded by wires, a tiny fan buzzing in his hands. He looked up, grin wide. "Look, Mama, I fixed it. I can make broken things work again." I laughed, though my throat burned. "You really can, can't you?" He tilted his head. "Could I fix people too?" I crouched, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "Maybe one day, sweetheart. Maybe one day." The rain hammered the roof, and I swore to myself I'd carry him through every storm. Still, deep down, I knew storms have a way of circling back. Because sooner or later, people who bury their guilt come knocking. And I had no idea how unprepared I still was for the knock that would come. The knock I feared didn't come from my father's fists. It came years later, on a rain-soaked Thursday, when my whole life smelled of burnt coffee and grease. Rosie's diner was packed, the kind of evening when every trucker in town wanted pie and every booth was sticky with syrup. My sneakers squeaked on the linoleum as I carried a pot of coffee that was almost empty. I was thinking about Daniel's science project, not the man in the tailored navy suit sitting in booth 6. I didn't see the chair leg. My foot caught and the pot tilted. Hot coffee splashed across a table, a phone, and the lap of the man with eyes so cold they looked cut from glass. "Oh my God, sir, I'm so sorry." I fumbled napkins, blotting his sleeve. "I'll pay for the cleaning, He held up a hand, crisp, decisive. "Stop! You'll burn yourself." His voice was low, clipped, like someone used to being obeyed. I froze, heart racing. "I can fix this, please let me, dry cleaner will do." He studied me, not the stain. Blue eyes, sharp cheekbones, hair just graying at the temples. Not local, not diner kind. I stumbled over words. "I'll, get you something to wear until it's done."
He leaned back, lips tugging into the ghost of a smirk.
"You keep spare suits in the kitchen?" Heat flared in my face. I thought of the closet at home, Grandpa Earl's old corduroy jacket. Faded, patched at the elbows, smelled faintly of pipe smoke. It was ridiculous, but it was clean. 20 minutes later, breathless, I thrust it at him. "Here, vintage." He slipped it on, and God help me laughed. A rich, genuine laugh that startled even him. "Vintage," he echoed, tugging at the frayed cuffs. "On Wall Street, they'd call it heritage wear. Don't push it," I muttered, though the corner of my mouth betrayed me. That laugh followed me into the kitchen where Rosie hissed, cigarette bobbing in her mouth. "You realize who that is?" I shook my head. "Michael Hayes, developer, shark. He's been circling this block for months. Wants to turn my diner into condos." My stomach dropped. "You're joking." "Wish I were." Back out front, Michael was scribbling notes on a legal pad, steam rising from his coffee.
He glanced up, caught me staring, and said, "This place has character. Don't."
My voice snapped sharper than I meant. This diner isn't just real estate. It's our life. He studied me, the smirk fading into something more serious. Noted. The next morning, Rosie met me at the door with a grin that showed too many teeth. "Guess who called last night?" "Your suit, man." Sighed, he's dropping the deal. "Won't touch the diner." Relief shot through me until Rosie added, "Unless you say yes to dinner." My stomach twisted. A setup. A game. Men with power always wanted something. That evening, while Daniel slept over at a friend's house and Agnes snored in her chair, I sat at the table staring at my phone. His number glowed, curiosity gnawed at me. Gratitude too, though I hated myself for it. Finally, with a reckless shove of courage, I dialed. "Dinner," I said, "but here. At the diner."
"Tomorrow at 6, no games." His chuckle was warm silk over steel. "Done." I hung up fast, pulse hammering.
I stared at the coffee tin under my bed, Daniel's future rattling inside with every coin and crumpled bill. What kind of man would trade a land deal for a meal? And why was I afraid I might actually want to find out? I'd asked for dinner on my terms, my turf, 6 o'clock. No games, and still my hands shook when Michael walked into Rosie's the next night without a tie, and with that quiet focus that made everyone else blur. "I'm not here to talk condos," he said, sliding into the corner booth. "Burgers and truth?" "Truth first," I answered. "I have a son, Daniel. I live with my grandmother." "My time is not a toy." "Noted," he said, no flinch, no smirk. "Then I owe you mine." I pulled out of the land deal because a woman in a coffee-stained apron reminded me places hold people together, and because she told me no. Rosie set 2 plates down and drifted away, pretending not to hover. We ate simple food. He asked about Daniel's science fair instead of my dress size or favorite vacations. When I said I had to leave by 8 to tuck my boy in, he checked his watch and paid at 7:45. The next week he came back with daisies from the farmer's market. "For your kitchen," he said, "not for me." He fixed the back door hinge that had groaned for months. He learned Agnes's tea order 1 sugar, no sermon, and brought a jar of local honey, because the cough you hide will not bully you on my watch. Men like that don't just grow in Springfield, Agnes murmured later, eyebrows doing their own gossip. But if he's a transplant, he's taking root. I made him wait. I had to. He never pushed. He showed up steady, like a lighthouse you can steer by without staring at it. When he finally asked to meet the people who mattered, I said yes on a Saturday that smelled of cinnamon and floor polish.
He arrived with a paper bag of apples and a sheepish grin.
They looked bossy. I assumed Agnes likes bossy apples. She likes being right, I said, ushering him in. Agnes gave him a once-over sharp enough to peel paint. You returned suits on time? Earlier than due, he said. She nodded, verdict suspended. The front door banged and Daniel barreled in, cheeks wind-stung. He stopped short, clocking the stranger. Before I could speak, Michael crouched to his height. Quick question. If I wanted to move a tiny car with no motor, could I do it with magnets? Daniel's eyes lit. If you use opposite poles and reduce friction weight? He sprinted to his shoebox of treasures, came back with 2 scarred magnets and a bottle cap on paper clips. In 2 minutes, they were shoulder to shoulder at the table, sliding that wobbling cap across a maze of spoons. Michael asked real questions, then listened to the answers like they mattered. After Daniel went to wash up, Michael traced the groove in the table where years of elbows had worn a crescent.
He's bright, he said softly. Bright like daylight.
Don't make promises, I warned. He doesn't need a new father. He needs people who keep their word. Then I'll start there, he said. Weeks folded into each other. Michael drove us to the clinic when ice turned the sidewalks to glass. He sat on cold bleachers through a regional science fair and hollered, like a boy when Daniel's potato battery car won second prize. He never touched me without asking. He never told me what to do. One evening he arrived with a thick envelope and nervous hands. I debated this, he said, glancing at Agnes, then at me. I'm not trying to buy entry. I'm trying to build a future beside you. Inside, a letter from the Hayes Foundation news to me that there even was such a thing awarding Daniel a full scholarship to a summer STEM institute at the state university, plus a matched college fund in his name, no press release. No strings attached. Heat rushed to my face, half gratitude, half fury. I don't want your charity. It isn't, he said gently. It's alignment. You want him launched. So if you say no, I'll shred it? But I wanted you to know how far I'm willing to stand with you. Agnes's chair creaked. Pride kept your father from loving loudly, Clara. Don't let it keep you from letting love help. I stared at the letter until the words blurred. Then at Daniel's crooked handwriting on the fridge. Mama, I can fix broken things. Something in me gave way not to dependence, but to the idea that partnership might be another word for oxygen. Okay, I whispered. But you don't get to steer because you paid for gas. Deal, he said, and his exhale sounded like relief. Spring came on in fits. The peonies outside Agnes's porch tried and failed, then tried again. One night after closing, the diner hummed in the dark freezers. Clocks, the private music of a place that's held more laughter than sorrow. Michael wiped the lost coffee ring from our corner booth and set something small on the table. A velvet box. He didn't open it. He just rested his hand on it like it might spook. Clara, he said, voice rougher than usual. I don't want to be your rescue. I want to be your home. Will you let me be that for you, for Daniel, for as long as breath cooperates? The box sat there between us, quiet and blazing. My heart pounded so loud I wondered if Rosie could hear it from her apartment upstairs. My fingers hovered, then retreated. I thought of slammed doors and coffee tins, of Agnes's steady hands and Daniel's magnets pulling a bottle cap across a table. What if saying yes built a bridge, and what if it also built a target? Ask me again, I said, breath shaking, after I tell my boy. And if he says no? Michael asked. Then you'll hear me say why I still might say yes. I reached for the box anyway and froze at the thud of footsteps on the back stair and Rosie's urgent whisper at the door. Clara, you need to come out front. Now. Rosie's whisper from the doorway yanked me out of the velvet box trance. Clara, front now. I ran, heart in my throat. A man in booth 3 was gasping, his face the color of chalk, a crumpled napkin clawed in one fist. Rosie hovered, useless with fear. Before I could think, Michael was behind the man, arms locking just under the ribs. One thrust, nothing. Another, harder. A wedge of steak launched onto the table with an ugly slap. The man sagged, coughing, alive. Michael stepped back, breath tight, hands shaking the way hands shake when they've done something that matters. He glanced at me, not for applause, but for footing. I nodded because I didn't have words.
He'd asked to be my home.
Then he proved he knew how to keep breath in a stranger. Later, after the siren glow faded off the windows, I found him in the dark booth with the box. Ask me again, I said, but let me tell Daniel first. Daniel listened on the porch swing that night, legs tucked under him, hair sticking up like a question. He saved a man? He did. And he laughs at my bottle cap cars?
He does.
And he's not trying to be my dad. He's trying to be ours, I said, my voice small and brave. Daniel leaned his head on my shoulder. Then, can the ring be small? So it's about us and not about people staring. I laughed and cried at once. Small is perfect, we told Agnes last. She took Michael's face in both her hands and said, "Don't break what we built because you were lonely before you found it." He swallowed and kissed her knuckles like a promise. We married at the courthouse, 3 signatures and a bouquet of supermarket daisies. No speeches, no white dress. Just a key on a ribbon Michael slipped into my palm, a new lock for an old house, so the past would knock before it let itself in. That night he set another key on Daniel's plate. "Hong has copies," he said, years unspooled like thread pulled clean. Agnes grew Bert-Light and bossier. "Eat an orange," she'd scold, pressing fruit into my bag before every shift. I learned the language of ache and doing it anyway. Michael learned to fix the soft parts a wrench can't reach. When Rosie finally sighed and hung up her apron, she sold us the diner for less than it was worth and more than I could afford. "Places belong to people who love them," she said, shoving the deed toward me. We painted the booths, kept the coffee cheap, and taped children's drawings near the register. Daniel vaulted from 8th grade certificates to lab goggles, from cardboard circuits to summer programs with kids who spoke fluent curiosity. His teachers sent emails that made my knees weak. "He doesn't memorize, he understands," one wrote. Michael framed that line like it was a diploma. Acceptance letters stacked like new snow. I stood with Daniel in a dorm room 2 states away and made his bed too tight. "You'll loosen up?" he teased, kissing my forehead. "I'll call every night," he lied, and nearly kept. Med school stole him and gave him back sharper. He learned to move inside other people's danger with hands that didn't shake. On the day he pinned his ID badge that said surgical resident, Agnes cried like she was 19 again. "See?" she whispered to me. "Gifted boys grow into useful men if you don't crush their tender." He came home one Thanksgiving between shifts, dropped his duffel by the door, and carved the turkey like a man operating on a patient, the same patience, the same humor. "Fruitcake is a hate crime," he declared, and Agnes cackled till she wheezed. Then came the call that bent the light, a ruptured appendix. An older woman, 6 hours under the heat of surgical lamps. I sat by the phone pretending not to. When he finally called, voice sandpapered and glad, I exhaled the breath I'd been stealing from other people all evening. "She's okay, Mom, we got her." The next day a number he didn't know kept ringing, the husband. Grateful, chatty, too chatty. "I want to thank your mother," the man insisted. "The one who raised you. I must meet her." Daniel laughed it off at first. People get sentimental in hospital hallways. But the calls kept coming. Polite, pressing. "He asked where I grew up," Daniel said, frowning at the sink while drying a plate he'd already dried.
He knew our street before I told him. That's strange, right? Michael's jaw ticked.
"You can say no." I looked at our boy no longer, a boy, and felt the old tremor of a past that refuses its grave. "If you say yes," I said carefully, "do it on our ground, daylight, all of us home." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Tea, then. 10 minutes. Gratitude and goodbye. On the chosen afternoon, I baked out of nervous habit cinnamon, slipped its comfort under every door. Agnes dozed in her chair, a knit blanket rainbowing her knees. Michael swept the porch twice, though it didn't need sweeping. I fussed with cups as if the right number would keep harm polite. Daniel Sedan pulled in first. He climbed out, straightened his jacket, and kissed my cheek. "Mom," he murmured, "please don't hate me if this feels big. Is it?" I asked. He looked toward the road instead of my eyes. "I don't know." A battered pickup turned the corner, sun flaring off the windshield, hiding faces. It growled up the drive and shuddered to a stop. My pulse pounded in my wrists. Michael stepped closer, not touching, the kind of nearness that says I'm here if you want me. The passenger door opened with a creak. I knew too well from another life. A woman's silhouette. Then a man's eyes set the teacups down before I dropped them. "Ready?" Daniel whispered. Was I? Or was the past about to walk up my steps and call me by a name I hadn't answered to in 20 years? From the porch I watched the pickup settle like a tired animal. Sun flashed off the windshield, then slid away, and two figures climbed down first, a woman bracing herself on the door. Then a man whose shoulders had carried pride like armor for most of my life. My fingers were damp on the tray of cups. Behind me, Michael stood close enough to catch me if my knees forgot their job. Daniel leaned in. "Mom, do you know them?" I heard my voice before I felt it. "Yes," the word scraped. "That's Margaret and Richard." He blinked, puzzled, then looked again, really looked at the line of my father's jaw. At the nervous twist of my mother's hands that I'd inherited and learned to hide. His breath hitched. "They're my parents," I said. The tray rattled. I set it down before I broke our good china and whatever steadiness I had left. Richard stopped at the bottom step, hat in his fist, eyes red as if winter had been living inside him for years. "Clara." My name fell out of him like he'd been carrying it sore and unspoken. I'm sorry." 2 words he had never spent on me when they might have mattered most. Margaret pressed a hand to her mouth. "We shouldn't have come without calling," she whispered, and then with a small strangled sound. I didn't know how to ask. Something fierce rose in me, old as the night I packed a duffel. "You knew how to tell me to leave," I said, quiet enough to make him flinch. "You knew how to lock a door." Daniel shifted, instinct pulling him in front of me the way he moved toward danger in the OR. "Sir," he said, voice steady, "you've been calling. You asked to thank my mother." "Why?" Richard's gaze lifted to him, and I watched recognition bloom hazel eyes meeting hazel eyes, the same stubborn set in the mouth. He swallowed like it hurt. "Because you saved my wife," he said, voice rough. "And because I have been wrong for 20 years. When I held Margaret's hand in that hospital and realized we could lose her, all I could think was, what if this was my punishment for throwing away my own child?" He looked back to me. "I've missed you every day. I know I don't deserve a single step onto this porch." Margaret nodded, tears running ungraceful and honest. "I told myself I was protecting you from shame. I was protecting myself from gossip." She shook her head, small and furious at herself. "I chose the wrong fear." Agnes's cane ticked once against the floorboards behind me. She'd woken without fanfare, eyes bright as flint. "Took you long enough," she said to her son. "A man can be right and still be a coward. Guess which one you were." Richard's face collapsed into something I didn't recognize maybe. The boy he'd been before the world taught him to be louder than his softness. "Coward," he answered, and didn't fight the word. I could smell cinnamon and dust and the ghost of chamomile in Agnes's sweater. I could feel Michael's breath steady and deliberate, matching mine like a metronome. The past pressed against my skin like a bruise you keep bumping. Daniel turned to me, torn between doctor and son. "Mom, do you want them to leave?" Yes lived on the tip of my tongue. So did a smaller, meaner please stay that I hated for existing. I heard Agnes breathe in, waiting to see which part of me would win. "Why now?" I asked, not moving. "Why after weddings you didn't ask about? Birthdays you skipped? The night my boy asked if he'd been unwanted and I had to decide which truth would break him less." Richard nodded like he'd rehearsed the worst answers and found none of them good enough. "Because the nurse said the surgeon's name. Because when I saw you in his face I ran out of places to hide. Because I have counted every day since I told you to go. And none of them felt right until I came here to say the thing I should have said on the first one. I was wrong. I was wrong. and I'm sorry. Margaret reached for the porch rail the way you reach for a pew when prayer stops being polite and starts being real. If you can't forgive us, I understand, she whispered. But if there is work to do, if there is a corner to stand in until we earn a place, I will stand. The afternoon had gone quiet enough to hear the ice on the birdbath crack. Daniel's hand brushed mine, a question and a promise in the same touch. Michael didn't speak. Agnes did. Tea, she ordered, because that's what mercy looks like when it's old and tired. Inside, standing on the cold makes people lie. I held up my palm, stopping them on the first step. Tea, I agreed, the word heavier than porcelain. But you will sit, and you will start with the night you told me I wasn't your daughter. You will use the whole sentence. You will say it where my son can hear the difference between regret and repair. Richard bowed his head. Margaret nodded once as if accepting a sentence. Daniel's fingers tightened around mine. I picked up the tray and stepped backward into the narrow hallway where every picture frame knew our names. They followed one step, then another, bringing winter and 20 years of silence into my house. And as the door clicked shut behind them, the kettle screamed from the stove. Agnes's cane struck the floor like a gavel, and I felt the question rise hot and unanswerable. If I poured the tea, would it cool my anger or would it wake something I wasn't ready to touch? Steam curled from the teapot like a warning. I set cups on the table with hands steadier than I felt. Richard and Margaret perched on the love seat as if ready to bolt. Michael leaned against the mantel, arms folded, watchful. Daniel sat close enough that our shoulders touched, the quiet weight of his loyalty grounding me. Agnes, regal in her worn sweater, tapped her cane once court in session. Say it, she told Richard, her voice dry as kindling. He swallowed, his Adam's apple jerking. The night you told us, Clara, about Daniel. I said you weren't my daughter anymore. His jaw clenched. That was a lie born of pride and fear. And I've carried the poison of it every day since. Margaret's hands twisted in her lap. I called you a disgrace. I let other people's whispers matter more than your cry for help. She lifted her eyes, wet and raw. I see what that cost us now. I see him. She looked at Daniel, then blinked hard. And I know what we missed. Daniel's breath hitched. You missed more than birthdays, he said, tone like a scalpel. You missed being the reason my mom didn't give up. That was Grandma. That was Michael. Not you. Margaret flinched, a sob catching in her throat. Richard lowered his head. We don't deserve his anger, but we'll take it. The clock ticked. The fire popped. I stared into my cup, cinnamon steam blurring my vision. My chest ached with 20 winters of silence. I wanted to scream, to demand why my suffering had been acceptable until it birthed a man in scrubs who could save their lives. Agnes leaned forward, eyes sharp. They abandoned you. And yet here they sit, warm in your house because you opened the door. Don't let them mistake tea for absolution. I won't, I said. My voice sounded unfamiliar, stronger and thinner at once. Richard leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking if there's a road back. Even if it's long and ugly. I lifted my gaze at last, met the eyes that had once frozen me on the front porch. A road implies walking. You didn't stumble, you shoved. You chose your pride over me, over him. My hand touched Daniel's. That doesn't vanish because you're sorry. Daniel squeezed my fingers, speaking low. Mom, you don't owe them a second chance. Not unless you want it. Michael finally spoke, voice calm but edged. If this family is to mean anything, it has to start with honesty. No promises they can't keep, no clean slate without scars. Margaret reached across the table, stopping short of touching me. Please, let us try. Even if you don't let us in your lives, let us show you that we've changed. I stared at her hand, trembling in the space between us. I thought of the night I'd left, snow dusting the lawn, my mother clutching a napkin and whispering she was afraid. I thought of Daniel asking at 5 years old if he'd been unwanted. I thought of Agnes rocking him through colic while I scrubbed floors, and Michael sliding keys across a plate so I'd know home had copies. Forgiveness isn't a gift, I realized. It's a weapon or a wound depending on how you hand it over. I set my cup down, the china clicking like a gun cocking. Sorry is a start, I said. But it isn't enough? You want a road? Then walk it. Outside of this house. Prove it without expecting me to open the door again. Silence crashed down. Richard's shoulders sagged, Margaret's chin quivered, Agnes exhaled, satisfied. Daniel leaned against me, warm and certain. Michael's eyes never left mine, steady as stone. The fire crackled, throwing shadows long across the room. My parents sat small in the glow, clutching tea they couldn't swallow. I felt the weight of every choice pressing down on me, heavier than the night I carried a duffel out into the snow. And even as the silence thickened, I wondered, had I just shut the door for good or cracked it wide enough for ghosts to find their way back in? I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please like, share, and feel free to tell us your own story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Help us grow as a storytelling community and be part of this journey with us. Can I count on you? Thank you so much.